And unless we start working in partnership together, we're not going to get what we want as an end result. So with the research that's been done, if we start working in partnership, and the partnerships for us are with the government, with NOMs, with DBIS, with the Skills Funding Agency, local authorities, the YPLA, providers, external agencies, the third sector, if we all work together, we'll all get that hay. And hopefully, together, we'll reduce reoffending. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary, for the enthusiasm and uplift in that. So we have about 25 minutes for comments, questions, reflections from the floor. What's your perspective on lifelong learning and its importance for offenders? What, if anything, do you want to ask about the inquiry into the future of lifelong learning, or any of the ideas or priorities that either of our speakers have put forward? So do ask a question, or share your experience, or put forward an argument, whatever suits you. So, who would like to start? Okay, we have two people with mics, one at either side, so
Hello? Good, yeah. Dominic Murphy, Wandsworth Prison. I'm also a director of the Learning Journey, a social enterprise which focuses on helping people who are interested in self-employment to be successful. I love the donkeys because it's part of my experience working in Wandsworth that often coordination is something which is one hard one. And I just wanted to ask the panel and others just how much of a priority we're putting on changing the culture by giving heads of learning and skills some lifelong learning. What we need is continuous professional development for them. I remember the previous event, which we had the privilege of hearing Angela Christopher, one of the other people in the room who were honoured for their work, talking about the importance of that element in getting it right. What's the panel think about that?
Okay, we're going to take two or three at a time, and then either Tom or Mary, if they wish, will respond. And of course, there may on some questions be people on the floor who can respond, like Angela if she wants to. But let's get a range of voices and then take it forward that way. So are there a couple of other people who want to say something? There's one there and one there.
Good morning, Melanie Jameson. I'm an independent specialist on offending and specific learning difficulties. And there's a really core issue that I would very much like your input on. And it's how do we persuade the powers that be of the common sense of investing in preventative and reducing reoffending initiatives. Because again and again I hear about 50 to 60% of excluded children, this figure about the sons of prisoners, children in care who seem to have a sort of assembly line that takes them straight into prison. And it seems to me that the difficulty, the core part of the difficulty is that this preventative work and all the money for it has to be found, the money for the preventative work and the reoffending work has to be produced as new money because the benefits and the cost saving by reducing reoffending and reducing these expensive prison places is further down the line. So how on earth, when the government is trying to cut money in every direction, can we persuade them of the paramount importance of investing in these key areas in order to save money down the line, and not just saving money, obviously saving lives?
Thank you. I think we might give a medal to anyone who can answer that question. Let them have a go in a minute. We'll just hear the third speaker, and then I'll invite Tom or Mary to respond.
Hi, my name is Charlie Ryder. I'm an outreach worker at Community Chaplaincy in Wandsworth Scrubs Prison, and I'm also an ex-prisoner. So I firstly wanted to start to say that when I was in prison, that education, doing arts and creativity made a difference to me in terms of being out of the cell and actually how I viewed other prisoners. And I was able to, when I came back out, to get back into university, and I was relieved that actually university was one place that the doors were open. Whereas in terms of jobs, the CRB checks and also the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act made it extremely difficult for me to find work. So I think that the legislation that's in place really needs to change. And in my role at the moment now as an outreach worker, as an ex-prisoner, I can, one of the things that was listed about the need to have ex-prisoners to support prisoners on their release, we met with the Minister for Prisons last week, and one of the points that was raised by one of our mentors was the need for services to all be in one place, so that when someone comes out, their housing is sorted, there's education, there's various different things, but all in one place, because the person that was the mentee that was saying that the only support that he had was through his mentor, because everything else was failing him. And as a person, and I think this is quite an important point to raise, he's someone who was coming off drugs. He moved out of the area where all the influences were, and he knew that if he stayed within the area, he'd be back on the drugs. What was made extremely difficult for him was that his probation said that he had to go back to the area where the drugs and stuff was, which financially he even had to, parts had to walk to get there. He isn't able to go to the Narcotics Anonymous meetings because he's on tag. And these are difficulties that face people when they've been inside. And so I kind of just wanted to say that education for me was really important, and that the university was a place that I was able to get to. But there's also another point that's quite important, I think, is that you get more money for doing other jobs in prison than you do for actually doing education, and so it then becomes a bit of a disincentive to prisoners to do education, and I think that that's something that needs to be addressed as well. And so I think that's a point that I wanted to raise. And then the third one I wanted to say is the needs in schools for because I've given talks and stuff in schools about my experience of prison, and I think that by having ex-prisoners go in and share their experiences, and maybe even having it as part of the actual school syllabus that you talk about prison issues, because I think that there is, I know that from some family members have said that when their child has spoken up about prison, their head teachers at times have said, don't ever talk about the fact that your parent has been to prison. So I think that it's an issue that needs to be raised. And there was a poem that I read written by a child which I think really encapsulates what the experience of what it's like for a child. And they said, people say bad things about me because of my dad. I respect they don't because of my dad. It hurts when they say bad things. Silly dad for being so naughty. On my birthday I really miss him. And N, no, I don't want to be like my dad except for his heart. And then they'd written, I love my dad very much. So I think that encapsulates what it's like for the difficulties of children that are faced with this thing. So they're just points that I wanted to raise.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Lots there, and it sounds like we need a total place for prisoners at the point of release that really join up the services. Tom or Mary, do you want to respond to any of those?
Perhaps I'll just start on the role of the halls, and only from my perspective, that I believe that role was created and at best can be highly effective. Having worked as an education manager in a prison and worked with governing grades from, used to be called head of activities and head of reoffending and head of all sorts, who changed on a weekly, monthly, regular basis, to have a governor grade responsible for learning across the prison is extremely welcoming. And certainly from an inspectorate point of view, the head of learning and skills role to bring the whole prison as an holistic learning centre is essential. And I would, on a personal level, fully support that role. I think it's been developed. I think a lot of heads of learning and skills have taken on other roles that have including head of reducing reoffending, resettlement. I agree with you that CPD is essential, and I couldn't comment whether heads of learning and skills have it and at what level. But that applies to everybody across education, training, healthcare, prison service, and I'm sure that their role should be and hopefully will be enhanced. Okay.